Hello and welcome to a pop-up Google Hangout on air with Dino Everett, who is a film archivist at the USC Hugh M. Hefner Archive. And today we're going to talk about the influence of early filmmaking technology on the final product, and also what that means for Dino's actual film preservation efforts at USC. So just going to say a quick hello to Dino. Dino Everett, how are you?
Doing good, Alicia. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, Dino, you are at the Hugh M. Hefner Archive at USC, and your role there is to archive and to preserve and to restore across a variety of activities. But in particular, we're going to talk today about what the film technology of the time actually meant for what viewers saw when they went to the movies. And we're talking a long time ago, you know, more than 100 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that often gets overlooked, I think, in the history of motion pictures is the influence that the technology had on the creative output. And it's one of those things where throughout, you know, the history of film archives, there's been a great emphasis on saving content of the motion pictures, kind of the end result of everything. But sometimes, as time passes, they get further and further removed from the proper context of how they were made in the first place. One of the things that I've been working on a lot recently is the sort of Vitaphone sound on disc technology, which, while it's really wonderful, we've been able to preserve so many of these unique and interesting little shorts and even some features where the sound was originally coming off of an analog disc. One of the drawbacks of modern technology is we've grown so far, or we've moved so far past what that original technology was like, that you can talk to people and they'll say like, oh yeah, I went to a Vitaphone show at, you know, this place or that place.
Yes.
And I'll sort of ask them, well, was the sound coming off of a disc? And they'll universally say, oh, well no, it was just a bunch of Vitaphone shorts. And I tend to try to remind them that, well, then it wasn't really a Vitaphone program, because while you saw, you know, Vitaphone produced shorts, you didn't really see a Vitaphone program, because if it was a Vitaphone program, the sound would have been coming off a disc. And so I think as we move forward into the future of film archiving, one of the things that I think falls back on our shoulders as the archivists is to remind people of all what this original technology is like. And there's many.
And to clarify, Vitaphone wasn't a studio, as you say. It was actually a filmmaking process, and there were other filmmaking processes at the time. So do you want to sort of set the scene? If I was a filmmaker in 1908 or thereabouts, what were some of my options in terms of filmmaking and pulling a movie together?
Well, in regards to the Vitaphone, like, which was the sound, that was a little later. We're in the 20s at that point.
Okay.
You know, there were two competing processes at the time, where one was sound on film, where they actually were recording the sound onto a disc and then transferring it over to the film. And then the other process was the Vitaphone, which was actually a collaboration between Warner Brothers and Western Electric, who made the actual equipment.
I see.
Vitaphone was kind of the company name that they came up for the collaboration.
So it was a trademark known at the time. It was a branded experience in a way. So not only did the filmmaker know that they were using a Vitaphone process, but the moviegoer would have seen Vitaphone logos and that sort of thing.
Right. And so
Okay.
what the Vitaphone meant to them was that you were, when you went to the theater, you were actually hearing the sound coming off an analog disc that was then synchronized with the projector. So it was a dual system of sorts where the sound and the picture were running simultaneously but come from separate entities. So there was that possibility, as we see in Singing in the Rain, of the sound kind of going out of sync.
Right.
And one of the things that I think has been lost over the years is just how special a process that really was, and how unique it was to watch a movie and know that the sound was basically coming from a record player,
Right.
And that's one of the things that I try to do is sort of remind people and do demonstrations where I have a 16 millimeter, which was the home format of the Vitaphone, which essentially, again, Vitaphone was a name, but it was really Western Electric equipment.
Okay.
And so I have the home version of the Western Electric equipment, and I like to go out into, conferences and things like that. I did one at the Library of Congress where you run a 16 millimeter short, and then the sound is coming off the disc. And in our last get-together, when we talked about the reel from Melody Lane,
Yes.
Universal feature, one of the things Universal will be restoring this movie on 35 millimeter, and they'll be marrying the sound to the picture so that it'll be easy to make it accessible to many people to see this portion of a lost film. But what I want to do is take the sound, have a new disc cut, and then take a 16 millimeter, the reel, and run it with the disc so that I can still present it the way it would have originally been seen back in the day.
So in a way, you're also not only preserving or seeking to show how the filmmaking experience occurred, but also you want to preserve what the viewing experience would have been.
Right. To sort of keep it in its context, how it would
sure.
have originally been seen.
And tell me why that's important to you, and why do you feel it's important? I mean, naturally it's important from an archiving and preserving perspective, because we should do that. We should look at all elements of this. But in terms of you personally, why does that matter so much?
Well, I mean, I think in some ways I often describe myself as I see everything through punk rock eyes.
Yes.
Because that's kind of how I grew up. And so if I feel like something is being marginalized, I feel like I need to stand up and say, hey, don't forget about this,
Yeah, yes.
And I think
so. I was just going to say, so what kind of disturbs you about that is that we're hopping from we're leapfrogging past all of that really important stuff straight to the commercial experience and straight to the, hey, I'm sitting at such and such theater and I'm with a pretty cool crowd and we're really honoring an old film or a series of old films. And what disturbs you about that is that there's been nothing presented about the nitty-gritty of how that actually ever came about, how it came to life.
Right, because it's one of those things that I feel very strongly, and we mentioned just a little bit earlier about how the technology really played a very, very crucial role in the history of motion pictures. Even if you just take something as simple as, for the first 60 years we had everything on nitrate film.
Right.
That is very important. And so anybody who saw a movie for, up until 1950, 51 saw that movie projected on nitrate.
Mm-hmm.
So, I believe as we as a culture get even further away from even watching movies on film anymore, um,
Right.
it's up to us, the archives, to go out of our way to do special presentations,
Yeah.
reminding people of how they used to be. I think one of the greatest things that's coming out right now is the Eastman House um, is doing a 3-day nitrate film festival.
That's next year, I think, right?
Yeah.
In March? Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really exciting.
Like
They just
that, I
announced
think,
that.
is one of those really exciting things that an archive is stepping up and saying, you know, we want to remind people of the experience of going to the movies and watching a projected nitrate print.
Sure, sure. And in a way, ironically, you and I are using right now some very high-tech elements to do what we're doing. We're live streaming. This is the technology that we have available to us at this very moment. But
Right.
we also know from our tests that it's pretty flawed.
Yes.
And in a way, this was a lot of the testing that would have been done in those very early days as technology rose. You had step-by-step innovations and also large leaps of invention,
Uh-huh.
and that you would have had to roll with those punches, and you'd have to adapt, and you'd have to see what opportunities that brought up, and then what doors that may have closed. So
Right.
like, in a way, we're kind of doing the same thing, and we know it hasn't been a smooth process in any way.
Right. And
So,
likewise, neither was the sound on disc, where
sure.
it was a process that came out. It kind of hit with the biggest splash with the jazz singer, but then
Right.
ultimately it got pushed aside for the better qualities of sound on film, where it just
Okay.
allowed for a better presentation. And it's
Yeah.
possible Google Hangout might get pushed to the side because something else is slightly better.
Very possible. So you have a couple of videos that you'd like to show us, and I
Yeah.
know that one of them is actually technology from 1908. So we're going to go way back now,
Yeah,
and
the
yeah,
1908 it's funny talking about modern day technology. Um, One of the other tests that I've done recently was for a documentary that they're doing on Alice Guy Blaché. They're making a
yes, heard
documentary
about
about
that.
her called Be Natural. And one of the things that they want to do is they want to use some of the equipment from her time to take a modern cinematographer and have him shoot under the restrictions of her time. So like using that old equipment and seeing, how difficult it was to shoot a movie with this sort of slightly cruder uh, motion picture camera, see what kind of results they come up with. And so I've been working with the cinematographer named John Bailey, and I did a bunch of tests with him to basically get around the human learning curve of
Sure.
really understanding how to use this older technology. And one of the
Right.
funniest things that I've realized is that um, if we ever if it really made me realize why film is sort of, from a business standpoint, is being pushed out of the way. It's because it's not a very good business practice for me to be able to take a camera that's over 100 years old, put a modern roll of film in it, and get a beautiful picture. That
Wow.
doesn't fit with today's sort of business model of reselling us the same things over and over again.
Or not to mention the business model of things breaking
Right.
and having to be replaced with great expense. This kind of reminds me of a series about Leonardo da Vinci technology, where a group actually did recreate a number of the inventions that he had,
Uh-huh.
so many hundreds of years ago, and what they experienced in making it with the tools that they had at the time. and also attempting to do whatever the function was of it.
Right.
So that's pretty cool, Dino. So you're basically a consultant on that documentary.
Yeah, I've been working with them and talked a lot about old technology, motion picture technology, and then now we're thankfully their game to want to use some of that old technology to shoot like a new scene using very old equipment. So
terrific. Okay, well, let's load it up and see what happens. And just for our viewers, if this doesn't work, we are going to, in the later video, we are actually going to edit it in. So go for it, Dino. Let's see what happens.
Do you want to do both clips or just...
Yeah. Well, let's see that first clip, and then how about we set up the second one, which was, if I remember correctly, I'm sorry, just remind me of what that second one is.
Well, one is a brief clip of the sound on disc technology.
That's right.
And the other one is the 1908 camera.
Yeah, let's see both of those. Let's go for that.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so let me give it a shot here.
And just let me know when you're clicking on YouTube.
Awesome.
So modern technology is not so great. Shall we click out and start that again, and we'll just try our sequence and see whether or not it's a sequence issue. So I'm going to make myself live again, Dino, and then we're going to go through the paces.
Okay.
All right, so here I am, your host. I'm speaking with Dino Everett from USC, the Hugh M. Hefner Archive, and we are going to try to show you some video now using Google+, Hangout on Air, YouTube app.
Okay.
Let's go for that. Okay, making you live now, making you present to everyone.
Okay, so here's the YouTube, and let's see what we got.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, Dino.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're here again. So what we'll do is I will include those, and we've spoken about what our plan B is. So
right.
Plan B is to show those. In the not the interim, but on the other side of that, is there anything you'd like to discuss with regards to what the viewer will see once that video is in there?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, I think in the sound on disc, the brief little sound on disc video, what it shows is the 16mm Western Electric outfit that was designed for the home, so that the amateur could basically bring those same types of Vitaphone shorts into their home and play it utilizing the same technology, where you would have a little 16mm projector that was hooked up to a turntable, and when you started the film reel, there would be like a little boop, and you would sync up the little sound on the record with a little X mark on the film, and then provided the film didn't break and provided you know your kid didn't bump into the table, your sound would run flawlessly through your film.
Something that we could only hope for now.
Yes, exactly. I wish there was a Google Sound on Disc right now.
Me too.
But the unusual thing about the home equipment was they released some feature-length films designed like this, and I just can't imagine, sort of a non-trained professional projectionist at home being able to sync up, say, 8 or 9 reels of a feature
Yeah.
for the wife and the kids.
Yeah.
My guess would be that it rarely went well.
Yes. Yeah,
And
it sounds to me like it probably wasn't taken up all too often across households across America because it was going to be a difficult thing to manage. Would you say
right.
that was the case? I mean, obviously it didn't take off, and then there were some copyright issues that are very distinct from our time now, which may have made that really difficult to do then if the same circumstances applied.
Yeah, well, definitely I don't think it took off.
Yeah,
As far as like, it wasn't like every home in America had one of these things.
sure.
It was expensive for one reason, and it was complicated on the other. So it's one of those things that when sound on film became the norm, um, this equipment seemed to vanish. The
Right,
home
okay.
equipment definitely seemed to vanish because it's very difficult to find this stuff, let alone find it in working condition. So yeah, I don't think it was a popular format. So it was easy to see that it sort of vanished from the memories of film historians.
And let's just talk a little bit about what it takes for you to actually track any of this down, because as you say, it's not like it's sitting around at your local antique shop generally. So what do you have to do to find these, or what have you done to
I
find
mean,
these?
a combination of things. I run an archive that has a good amount of technology already because the gentleman who started the archive began collecting this in the 30s.
Oh
So,
wow,
I do have my own little museum worth of equipment here.
wow,
But then finding when I need other parts and pieces and things, you kind of have to go the way of eBay and things like that, and just start searching and hope that you come across things. And sometimes when you're dealing with eBay sellers who have potentially bought things from an estate sale, they can sell things off piecemeal into a million different directions, and that just makes the whole quest even more problematic.
wow. And so I understand that you have actually experienced that with some Vitaphone materials. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, on multiple occasions, where most recently with the case of the reel of Melody Lane, uh,
Yes.
the Universal musical, I got the reel in one of the lots that a particular seller was auctioning off, and I won 2 out of 3 lots, and the third lot went to somebody else, and the seller was not responsive when I reached out and said, I work at a film archive, I'm trying to
Hmm.
restore this stuff, can you please put me in touch with the person who bought the third lot, and
Yeah.
won't respond.
Wow, how incredibly frustrating. And so really these opportunities, they rise up, they sometimes get shattered into a million pieces, and you just have to wonder whether or not you're making 3 steps forward and about 4 steps back every time.
Yeah, I mean,
Some of that.
it's happened many times where somebody will have like a feature-length film on 35 millimeter and will sell it one reel at a time
Mm.
over the span of a year.
Oh my goodness, what a nightmare.
Hmm.
So, in terms of our viewers, what can they do? Is it's almost like we need to have 1-800 save the film. So,
Well, yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
so you can ring up and sort of say, "Hey, I found this. What do I do with it?"
ideally, sure. Like if you come across something that's lost, it's great. Like when I picked up Melody Lane, like I said, the first thing I did was I reached out to the sort of film enthusiast community
Mm-hmm.
and was asking, because I'm more into silent film than sound film, so
Okay.
I was asking, is this a preserved film? And when
What
they
is the
came back,
status of this film right now?
yeah, so
Yeah.
I got the information from them, and they said, well, no, it's a lost film as far as we know. So then
Wow.
I knew it was a sound on disc title. So then the next step, I went to Ron Hutchinson from the Vitaphone project and asked him, do any of these discs survive? And,
Right.
and he replied back, oh, these, about most of the feature, the sound survived, and
Wow.
thankfully the reel that I had on film was one of the discs that survived. So we are able to then go to Universal, whose material it is, and say, here we have some material from a lost musical. Do you want to preserve it? And obviously they wanted to preserve,
Do
because
do
it's
we want to
all there
take
is.
our chances and you try playing that little clip because we played that for the Film Preservation and Restoration Summit a couple of days ago.
Yeah, let me
Um,
see.
let's see if we can play that now.
Let me see if I
And
um, still have it ready to
okay,
go.
great.
Um, yeah, let me just open up QuickTime and we will see if something else will fail.
Every opportunity.
Yeah. um,
You
so,
are, and you are presenting, so go right ahead. There's nothing I should need to do on my end. We'll see.
right, I'll just have to share it, I think, right?
Okay. Yeah, I
Screen
think that's what
share.
we've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so, boom.
Wow.
I hope that wow is because you can see it.
Yeah.
All day when Honey was out of her head, she kept repeating the story of 3 a day. I'm rolling in the moonlight now, and the daytime I'm rolling in the sunshine. Everything is beautiful now, and they are gonna be mine. Roll, 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 roll,
Okay.
That's just fantastic, Dino. That's really great. So to make it clear, what happened was you found the vision, and naturally there wasn't any of that sound that we just heard then.
Right.
You reached out to Ron Hutchinson from the Vitaphone project. He had the disc, and in that little clip, what you've done for us is married them together so that we could see what a snippet of it would look like.
Yeah, I married the sound and picture together and just took little snippets from different points in the reel.
Okay, but ultimately you're obviously working to a much larger project,
Yes.
and yeah, and so what's the plan for viewing that project ultimately? When would a consumer be able to experience it, or do you know what that situation is?
Well, right now, I know Universal is working with Photochem, and I think they've made a negative from the film print that I had, and so
Mm-hmm.
the next step is to get the sound over to them so that they can clean it up and then marry the sound to the film. I was also a friend of mine at the Library of Congress said that they have some reels from a silent version of that film.
Right.
So I'm going to get a transfer from them to see if any of that matches up to the sound, because sometimes when they would make the silent versions, they would just take the existing footage and add intertitles. Other times they would shoot completely separate footage, so it may not match up at all. But
right, okay.
the first step is to see if it does match up, and then potentially you could cobble together sort of, a closer version of the story, so that it wouldn't just be like, oh, here's everything at the end where everything works out.
Right. So do we want to test the gods of modern technology right now and attempt the YouTube app again? Would you like to try
Sure,
that, Dino?
why not?
Why not? Why?
We're on a roll, so let's give it a
Let's
shot.
just see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay. And let's...
Tell me when are you okay? You clicked on YouTube. That's fine. That's great. Looks like something's happening. Ah, no luck.
No sound?
No sound.
Okay.
Hey, do you still have those two windows open? Maybe we could show it there quickly.
Yeah, actually, let me do the
All
screen.
right, let's do that. Screen share.
Okay.
Great. So I can see, and I hope that our viewers can see, the 1908 Pathé 35mm camera, also titled A Successful Test. So is this you, Dino?
Yeah, this is me with a couple of interns, and what I'm doing right now is I'm threading up the camera, which in itself was a unique experience, because you have to set the shot, and then once you have the shot all set up, then you can thread the film. So
Okay.
once you've thread the film through the camera, you can no longer see what your shot would be. So back in these early, around 1908, early 1900s, the films that they would shoot, one of the reasons a lot of them take place on one set, kind of more like a theatrical setting, is because the equipment itself was difficult to set up that shot. So once you had a shot set, you wanted to shoot as much on that one setup as possible, so that you didn't have to have like a bunch of magazines with just little tiny rolls of film in it. You wanted to shoot as much in one setup as possible. So what I have here is I've set up a shot, and then I just have them kind of walking around, and I'm shooting them walking around, and then eventually the clip is going to switch over to me watching back the footage on a flatbed.
Okay.
So you'll ultimately, like what they're doing right now, just kind of walking around, in another few seconds you'll see back what that looks like as
Okay.
captured on a 100-year-old motion picture camera.
So this is number 97 Ways to Have Fun with Interns. I wasn't aware of this one.
Yes, no. Unfortunately, yeah, for the interns, not a lot of people can do this one. But it's one of those things where I learned a lot not only about using the old camera,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, I learned a lot about the you know, going back and watching movies from that era. I now
Yes,
watch them with a different frame of mind.
sure. Yeah, completely, because it's really it's context for you now, and I think the filmmakers of the day would have had that context, whereas the
Right.
viewers mightn't have. But having said that, the viewers had a built-up series of context that involved um, a number of ways that things were being filmed, or rather viewed, in those days.
Yeah.
Um,
But when
so
we watch
they
them,
sequentially.
but when we watch something from 100 years ago today, we no longer have that context.
That's right. We don't have those layers of viewing types that somebody from the day would have had.
Right.
Yeah. Not to mention, we don't have also any of the discussion around that happening in newspapers, happening at home, happening, with friends about
Hmm.
how things were viewed. So the context is entirely removed.
Yes,
So
definitely.
let's see the second one, and the second one, just remind me, is what again?
This is actually, I filmed it in my office where I'm just running a short sound on disc title. This one is called Pop and Son from 1930, and it was kind of it's very characteristic of a lot of them where it was a couple of comedians that also sang, um, and I'm
So
kind of,
real vaudeville roots there.
yeah, very vaudevillian sort of act, and I'm
Okay.
sort of bouncing back and forth between what the image on the screen is, but more so showing the technology. So showing um, the little projector running simultaneously with the turntable. And I
Yes.
will point out I have made uh, a modification to the turntable because those old discs um, played using a needle that was almost like a little nail, and
Oh, wow.
and each of the discs would have like a little uh, series of check boxes, and after about 20 plays, the discs were virtually unusable, um,
Right.
because the nail had sort of like scratched up the disc. So what I've done in order to not
Damage
damage
it.
the discs is I've sort of modified the equipment to take a modern diamond stylus turntable arm, so
Wow.
that the discs that I use won't get like damaged like they did back in the day.
So
Um,
just going back to the viewing experience, part of that too is acknowledging that there was some decay of quality because those discs over use were going to be providing less quality with every use.
right, the decay was actually built in, and
Right.
so if you were potentially coming to see the jazz singer on its 20th or its 18th play, you
Pity
know,
for you.
right, you weren't getting necessarily the same experience that the people on screening number one got. Um,
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, let's see that.
okay, and this one's much shorter too, so.
That's fantastic, Dino. So when was that filmed and who put that out?
That was a 1930 short, and I'm blanking on who. Who
That's
the company
okay.
was.
So was it a studio picture or was it
Yes,
independent?
that was a studio picture. Yeah,
All right, and the two fellows you mentioned were
Benny
what were
Rubin and somebody else.
okay, right. Well, okay. So I would have that looked like a snippet. So was that was a short? How long is the actual full length version?
The full length version is about 10 minutes long, 10 to 12 minutes long,
Mm-hmm.
and they go through a number of little comedy routines and sing a couple of songs mixed in.
Right. Okay. And that would have been a supporting short to whatever feature was playing.
Right, right. Usually they would have had, like a couple of the little musical shorts, and then there would be a feature to close out the program.
Terrific. So where to now? What's on your plate? What is happening in this area for you? And what can we expect to see coming up?
Well, one of my favorite formats was an early home movie format that was 28 millimeter. It was
Mm-hmm.
released in 1912, and since a lot of those early prints are now 100 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I like to run around as much as possible with my 28 millimeter projector and show these early prints, because I like to point out that film is one of the only mediums that you would be able to take a reel of film that is physically 100 years old, pop it in a projector, and it still runs fine.
Wow. Whereas if I wanted to take a Betamax country country music singer from like 1979 or something, I'd really struggle to find
Right.
that player. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
Actually, is it no? I'm not thinking about Betamax. I'm thinking about what was the name of those cassettes that you put in your car, and they were really large. They weren't
8-track.
the sorry 8-track.
Track.
Yeah. So I doubt there is a car on the road today. Perhaps
Yeah.
maybe in a third world country, but not on the road today in America or Australia, where
Yeah.
you could just pop in an 8-track and just keep on trucking, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. Well, that's just amazing, Dino. And so your day is basically focusing on preservation across, as I was saying earlier, a variety of areas.
Yes. So
And is
it's,
there
yeah, it's
anything in
not just film content, but
Mhm.
films in their context.
Yes, that's it precisely. And I think we could end on that. It's not just content, it's films in their context.
Hmm.
Terrific, Dino. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
And appreciate another opportunity to chat with you about this. And
My
we
pleasure.
will finalize this video so it's nice and lovely for everybody else to see. Thank
Right.
you again,
Sounds good.
Dino.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.